tonight we're going to go through multi-block printing and puzzle piece or jigsaw printing. So two other ways to do color relief. Unfortunately, I forgot part of my demo, but we can kind of fudge it a little bit. We got the registration and the blocks, so I think we'll be okay. And I can figure out how to show you the other part later. So last week we went through reductive color printing. So with that, you have one block, and you just cut, and print, and you just use the same block. Now we're going to move on to multi-block. So each color in the print will have a separate block. So this is an example of multi-block or multiple block. So this print is done with 3 blocks. Like so. And when you put them together, you get your print.
Keep it clean, it's endless, right?
Yep. And if you don't put your blocks in a storage box with
Oh no.
solvent, it'll last forever, but it's okay. I'll make it. So the advantages of this is you have the colors are all separate. So if you make a mistake on one block, you don't have to start over. You just do it one block and you keep on going. With reduction, if you make a mistake, you'll have to kind of work with it or start a little over again, right? Because you just got that one block. The disadvantage of this is registration becomes a little more challenging. Myself, I can't cut the blocks exactly the same size. If you can, that's awesome. If you can't, there's different ways to register or help you register to line things up. But registration can be a little bit tricky. So there's a couple different ways to do registration. This is a more of a traditional way. So I use registration marks here, carved right into the block. And those are called kento marks. So it's a traditional Japanese way of doing multiple color. So kento, it rhymes with bento, that's how I remember. And basically the kento marks are on the same spot on each block. So with multiple block, you want to start with your key image. So this is the key image or the key block for this print. So it's the one that has the most detail usually, and it's usually the one you print last.
Okay.
So I carved this out first, and I carved my kento marks right up there. So it's a corner and then a center mark. And then when you print, your paper will actually sit on the inside of the kento marks like so. So every time you print, you're going to lay down your paper into those marks, then lay it down on your image. So it's really important that your kento marks are nice and straight and clean. So when I cut them, I use an X-Acto knife and then cut up against them so I get a nice sharp clean line.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
So the thicker the tape, the better the registration?
The thicker the board, yeah. Yeah, would be, yeah. So you can do this with wood. I did this with lino. And that sits on there. So this space, the inside of the kento mark to your image, is the space between the edge of your paper and the edge of the image. So you have to keep that in mind. So if you want a 2-inch border all the way around your image, then you have to make these further apart. Using the kento marks, it doesn't really matter what size the block is. You can't go smaller, but if you have a block that's bigger than this, that's okay because the kento marks are always going to be in the same spot relative to the image. So that way you don't have to worry about cutting your block exactly the same. So that's a traditional way of doing it. So to get your kento marks on the same spot on each block, 2 different ways to do it. I didn't bring any photocopies, but you can do, you can photocopy your key image with the kento marks and then do a oil wintergreen transfer onto each block.
So all 3 would be a copy.
Yep.
Okay.
So you copy this on each block, and then on each block you decide what you want to carve out. But you want to make sure you transfer the Kanto marks, not just the image.
So
Right,
each
because the-
Kanto mark has to be identical on each.
As close as you can when you cut them out, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So doing the oil wintergreen transfer with the Kanto marks will help with that, because then they'll be in the same spot relative to the image. If you didn't want to use oil wintergreen or didn't have any, what you could do is carve out your key block, ink this up, and then transfer it onto wax paper. And then take that wax paper and transfer it over to your blank block and rub it down, because the wax paper won't hold the ink very well. You'll transfer the ink onto.
Do you get a fatter line? Because it
You do a little bit.
squish a little bit?
It'll squish a little bit, yeah. So oil wintergreen's ready to go. So that's how you transfer Kanto marks onto each block. And when you print, you don't print the Kanto blocks, the marks, just your image. So only worry about either printing them if you're doing a transfer with wax paper or oil wintergreen. That's the only time you have to worry about making sure they're transferred onto their blocks. But when you're printing on paper, you don't ink these up. Does that make sense? Yeah.
It's all logic.
That is logic. So that's the traditional way to do it. The other way to do it is with registration pins.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So I'll have some here. Hues also sells them. We usually use these for silk screening. They can also be used for leaf printing. So this takes a little more setup. Bear with me. So I use these together with this. So it's an L-shaped piece of mat board, and I should have enough for everyone if everyone wants to try it. I guess if you're doing this more in the long term, this is just mat board, so over time it's going to wear out after a while. You could make one out of wood, makes something really nice and long lasting. And then we have our blocks. So these blocks, they're multi-blocks. They don't have no Kanto marks. And these blocks are fairly close to each other as you can. They're probably a little bit off. So to help out with that, so these, without the Kanto marks, you have to get your blocks as close to each other as you can in terms of size. And when you do the transfer, again, I apologize for not having the photocopies here. You always want to transfer to the same corner. So when you lay down your photocopy on the bare block, you want to make sure the same corner is lined up for each one. So I'm using this corner here, and I'm using this corner here. So you can see on the back, I've marked the corner. So when I lay down my photocopy, let's say this is my photocopy, I'm lining it up with this corner here. So it lines up with those two edges, and then doing my oil wintergreen transfer. And then I do the same thing over here. And that'll help with your registration. Because if they're slightly off and you line it up to this corner, then everything's going to shift over this way for one block. And if you do it over on this corner, it's going to shift over this way. This way, if they're always registered the same corner, they should line up a bit better, even if they're slightly off. So the advantages of doing this is you don't have to worry about the Kanto marks, and you can make your paper as wide as you want. This, if you want to make like a 4-inch border, then you're using a lot more material to get your block. So when you finish transferring, and again, the idea is the same. You want to start with a key image and transfer that onto each block, and then decide on each block, what do you want to cut out? So this is going to be my background layer, for example. I've done a transfer here, and I started carving out what I want for that block. But you're always working from that key image, and then you're always transferring to that same corner on each block. So I've marked it on each.
So the rule is to always start with the key image.
Yep.
Right.
You start by transferring that onto each block. Line up to the corner, or using the Kanto marks, and you print. And then when you're printing, have this kind of jig set up here. and then marking that, using that same corner on each every time I print. So there's a mark here, that lines up here. So I'm always using that same corner, keeping things consistent. So I usually tape the jig down, this piece of mat board down. So. And then I've marked on the jig where I want my paper to go. So I made a set of lines here. So I give myself a 2-inch border here and a 3-inch on the bottom. So this is like doing a registration sheet. Your paper goes down like that. So if you didn't want to use registration pins, this would be enough. As long as you line up that piece of paper to the lines you made on your mat board, that should be okay. Registration pins give you a little more precision with your registration. So I will lift it up so I can show you as I do it. So I'm going to take down the pins. Like so.
Only tape.
So I'll take my piece of paper, take that out for now, and line it up with that corner I made with pencil, like so, just like that. So with the registration pins, we're going to use registration tabs, little pieces of plastic that have been hole punched, and the holes fit into the registration pins. Like so.
May I make a rudimentary comment?
Sure.
He's using the green tape, which is a low tack tape. If he used the white tape, it would destroy his jig over time.
And the back of the paper.
Yeah. So the green tape is very good. Not that white tan tape that you use. Anyway, that's all I'll say.
Nope. It's a good point. So it looked like this. And each piece of paper will have the tabs put on the back. So when you take this one out, take your next piece of paper, line it up, and then 2 more tabs, tape them. You can carry on, and then each one, the tabs will be in the right spot relative to the jig in your image. So when you're printing, you don't want to take the pins off until you're finished printing your entire image. Otherwise, your registration is going to be out of whack. So that'll just stay there the whole time. So if you want to, you can make them more centered. If they're a little bit off, as long as they're off for all of them and they stay there, that's fine. Like so.
So are you allowing for a margin of error when you print? So you trim the print after, or?
You can if you want. Yeah, like if they're not square, you mean? Or
Yeah.
Yeah. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
There's a lot to take in.
Do they come as a set when you buy them, or?
Yeah, they come with a set, and then you get a bunch of tabs.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's what I meant. That,
Yeah,
the
a
thing in the
package.
tab.
Yep.
Is it worth the extra tape?
Tape's cheap.
Or
To use that as registration as opposed to, or
um,
are you just so good that you don't have to use any of those aids anymore?
no, I'm still.
I'm asking because I had trouble with my registration, so.
Oh, okay.
He's doing a very positive registration, and it's got structure to it, whereas the other style.
The other side, we're just flipping it over, and I actually still use that quite a bit.
Well,
like
I
that.
use my registration marks.
My marks, but after when you, like the way I showed you, you put the block on top,
Yes.
then you have to flip it over.
Oh, no, I didn't do that. Maybe that was my problem. I put the block down and the paper on top of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. For these, you can still, if you wanted to, maybe not so much with the Kanto marks, but with these, if you wanted to, you could still do the flip method. Where you put your first layer and then put your block on top, and then flip it over, like we did last time. There's a chance it might sit up, right? So you could use this for reduction as well if you wanted to. Like so. So I'll just do 2 blocks and print them up quickly so you can see how they come together. Let's see if my registration actually works. Any suggestions for colors?
What are you doing?
I'm doing this owl here. Here. This will probably a dark color.
Make 'em funky.
Make them funky. Got it.
So how are you cleaning those and maintaining those? You have to clean them very well. Are you also putting tissue between each surface so you don't get scratches, or it's not that, you don't have to be that careful?
No, if you're gonna keep them long term, I'd probably put some wax paper or something in between.
Between the layers, yeah.
Yeah. These are starting to wear out a little bit though.
Wearing out due to storage or wearing out due to use?
Storage.
Yeah.
How do you store them? Like, do you just store them in like a file cabinet like that? A flat file, or?
Yeah.
Or just wherever?
I have one at home. One drawer is just for blocks.
That's delaminating that.
This one?
We got warm.
Really?
Warm?
Yeah.
I just put on the fan here.
But it makes no difference because it's as long as you.
Yeah, okay.
You can
No,
always
yeah.
just put the glue in.
You sure don't need much of those colors.
I know, yeah.
That was my first mistake. It's like, oh, there's way too much.
So if you do mix too much color.
Yep.
And you want a specific color and you want it identical for each run.
Yeah.
You mix a large volume and then put it in a film canister or something like that, or?
Something that's airtight. Yeah. So sometimes I use
It's
saran
very
wrap.
hard to duplicate the colors.
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you're gonna do a run of 10, you wanna make sure you have enough ink, right?
Yep.
And do you use extender all the time?
I usually just use it when I need to make my colors transparent.
So which one is extender?
Extender is this kind of
Oh,
wavy.
You have the
white
white,
color.
the white.
The whitey color, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then your open time is hours.
Yeah.
Should have to really be conscious, well, I guess that comes with knowledge, but you have to be conscious of how much ink to mix. so that you can do 10 runs, right?
Yep.
It's like hearing.
It's one of the weeks.
We only have like 3 weeks left. Like,
Oh, did you? Oh, good, good. Oh, thanks for going. Yeah, we enjoyed that. We would just wouldn't think this young girl. It was so okay. These others. Oh, yeah. Nope, that was, that's.
And then for this technique, you need multiple applicators, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you probably, again, probably do 2 layers, one after the other, and then you should probably let your ink dry a little bit, like overnight. Otherwise, the ink is going to start stripping off your print onto the block. That'll affect the next time you print. So,
Sort of like peeling.
yeah.
Should it be dried and touch or just overnight? Cause like mine is still kind of tough.
Yeah. So it might be longer than overnight, depending on how many layers you got.
And the relative humidity.
Yeah. That too.
not that it's been humid lately.
Are there more expensive pigments? Are the reds more expensive than the blues? Or something like that?
I'm not sure.
Let me see. Yep.
Yep.
Regular 33.85 and the red is 35.95. Not too bad.
I think it's a purple that's really expensive, but it's really nice.
Oh, processed red is 48.50.
Oof.
Then I would assume some colors are more light fast than others. Reds would fade.
Yeah.
Like heat.
Just like me.
That's what I thought.
So your ink surface doesn't have to be perfectly flat to the roller thing?
It's easier.
Yeah, but I was thinking that if your roller, or what's the machine called?
The brayer?
Brayer.
Yep.
Is perfectly flat, then the substrate has to be perfectly flat.
Ideally, yeah.
Okay. So like when you go to the Mendel, they have absolutely flat ink surfaces.
It's quite nice in there, yeah. Yeah, quite nice.
Oh, I shouldn't say flat, true. I should say.
Mm. Okie dokie. So again, you want a proof on newsprint, but we'll just skip that.
Do you want some? I have some cut up.
But then you have to.
For the demo, I think it'll be.
So typically you do proof to see how you're doing, or?
Typically do proof just to, especially if it's your first time printing, just to build up ink on your block.
Okay.
Because first, you'll see, because this one will probably be a little bit on the light side. Do one or two on newsprint first, because it's cheap paper.
Yeah.
And then go on to your good paper. To keep things consistent.
Making sure you're got it right.
Yep. So I put the block in the corner here. If you want to really make sure that the block's not going to move, you can take some green painter's tape, take an X-Acto knife, and carefully cut through a few layers of tape.
When we make a little stop.
Yeah, so get a really like a thick piece of tape, and then carefully, scissors.
You want thicker tape so that you have a register, what you call it, mechanical registration.
Mm-hmm. I've used the factory side of the tape and butt that up against the block. Now make sure the block doesn't move when you're printing, so you're securing it. Lay that down.
Sure, you've done this so many times to make it look easy, but what you're doing, it's always the inside edge, lay it forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you can't be too angled about it, yeah.
You're so observant, James.
Well, no, I'm a veneer guy, so I have to. Okay, so if you weren't happy with that, could you apply more ink?
I'll put the paper back down.
Yeah, no.
No. Usually not.
So the experience of knowing when you have enough ink applied to the print is experience, right?
Yeah, you can always lift it up and check. Make sure I think that's just the way it's going to be. First layer. Then you can take your block out. Your second block in.
And your jig should be as thick as possible. You're using matte.
I'm using matte board, but if you
Yeah.
wanted to go with like, you don't want it thicker than your block,
Well, of course, obviously.
but yeah, you can go a little thicker.
What's so casual about that?
Well, once you get the restoration plate set up, it's not bad.
Well, no, I'm impressed.
No.
So as long as you get the tail end in, just lay it down.
All good. Right? Sure. Anyway, they are.
Oh, that's good.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
probably better off doing a newsprint true first, just to build up that purpley color, but the registration is pretty
Cool.
decent, right?
Yes.
It's
So.
really good with the shirt and
Yeah.
apron. Fabric. It's perfect with your shirt and your apron.
Yes.
Planned it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
You planned it.
Mhm.
very
You're
nice.
getting cool. I'll just turn the fan.
I'm good.
Okay.
You wanna see this one inked up and printed, or? Yeah?
No,
Super good.
Super good.
I cut myself.
So I don't think we should get carried away with the
Put ink on.
absolute accuracy of things.
Well,
That's
and
the
I would
logic
talk to
of
Patrick because I
you've
didn't
had a
about
jig
it.
with two sides
Excuse me. Yep.
versus
Take
four.
the top. I need to flip it.
'Cause I could see some people, including myself, getting carried away with the whole precision of it.
Yep, for sure.
That's,
Yeah.
Let's use the same colors again. Excuse me. So again, just inking up the image, those Kanto marks. So with the Kanto marks, if you want really precise registration, you have to make sure your paper is square as well, that corner that you're lining up. Because if your paper is a little bit off, then your registration will be a little bit off. So
but generally, purchased paper would have a factory edge.
Yep.
Yeah, so
if you start tearing and cutting paper, then you'll
the
have to.
tiered edge is not your accurate edge.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, I'm just laying it down here first, and then putting my paper down. is what I have in hand.
No, I was just wondering about the friction.
Just keep the back of paper clean-ish. But yeah, wax paper. I use Yupo
Okay.
for backing paper. They actually make a specific backing paper for doing hand printing. It's a little bit have those slick or slipper. Yeah, give you a little more.
Sorry.
Oh, good.
Oh.
That is
Take that one.
Oh, excuse me.
So that's registration using the Kento marks.
Okay, so say you wanted to make 10 of those,
Uh-huh.
and your buddy comes in, wants to take it for coffee.
Uh-huh.
Do you put the briars in a plastic bag or a Tupperware container, or what do you do?
How long's the coffee?
So you say forget it, right? You gotta do it all at once.
No, this ink will stay out.
Really?
Stay wet for a while. Yeah.
I'm just thinking that the ink will dry on the bride, that's all.
Hmm.
But you're telling me it doesn't.
Not for coffee.
Not for.
For dinner, I would clean it up.
Okay.
For short periods of time, maybe like
Short
a.
period,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the problem people are finding is that it takes a long time to dry.
Yeah, but that's an advantage, I would think.
I would think so, yeah, but
Yeah.
depending if you're doing multiple layers, then.
Yeah.
You have to wait in between layers.
Yeah.
Can't cheat. No accelerators or blow dryers or anything like you
I
do.
don't know if this one has a dryer. I know at oil-based inks, you can get a cobalt dryer.
Yeah.
It's not very good for you.
It's like a catalyst kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not very healthy, so I wouldn't recommend it unless you.
Anything that dries quickly is not healthy.
Yeah. So. I know at the university we use rubber-based inks.
Okay.
They're really great to use, but if you're printing more than 3 or 4 layers, it's basically ink on top of ink. It's not really absorbing into the paper anymore.
That's right.
And honestly, it would take like a week in between layers just to have it dry, just because it just won't dry. It's really, really tacky.
Yeah.
It just, your paper will stick to the flock, and when you lift the paper up, it'll tear.
And the first layer probably won't dry as rapidly as the last layer.
Yeah.
So why do you use those?
Production problem.
It never dries. So in terms of like, you can go out for dinner with rubber-based inks. Like you can leave it overnight. And I've done that in my studio when I used to use rubber-based inks quite a bit.
Is it a cost thing then? Or toxicity?
It's more. The rubber-based inks that we use, they're meant for commercial printing. So I think they're a little more toxic than what we're using here. Mainly why we use them is we use them for lithography. So we just end up using the same inks for both areas. So I guess it's more of a cost. They don't skin over as much as well. So when you have large groups of students, that's kind of nice.
So what you just did, you wouldn't do that, you'd wait for the first color to dry and then do the second.
If you're doing 2 layers, you can probably do them one after the other, depending on what you're doing. If you're doing like a large flat of color, I'll probably let that dry first, then put your color on next layer on top. Something like this, where it's not that much color, things have been carved out on each layer, you could probably get away with doing it one after the other.
Now,
So
is
notice
it
you have stuff hanging up here. Is it the best way to store it for drying flat?
and out, or hanging up like that?
I think it dries through oxidation, so leaving it out is probably best. So exposing it to air. So yeah, clothesline works really well. At the university we have drying racks that are with an open wire, so good airflow. In my home studio, I have something like that set up, just a clothesline.
So when you're doing multiple layers,
Mm-hmm.
and you're taking time in between layers, then you would have, is there such thing as a hot, where one goes, it absorbs into the next color, or like if you, I don't know how to explain it, like, does one meld into the other if you're doing it quickly? Or is it one dry layer over top of another dry layer? So if you're doing the purple
Mm-hmm.
over the black, for example,
Okay.
or the black over the purple,
Mhm.
they would, do they combine and become one, or are they two separate layers?
But does it mix?
Yeah, that's my question, thank you very much. Does it blend?
Yeah.
Like, does it mix? No?
No,
So if you did a blue and then a yellow, would
Would
it,
it
be
would
green?
it affect the color?
it would depend on the transparency of the ink.
Okay, it has nothing to do with the time between?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. I could explain it.
You're welcome. I knew what you meant.
That all comes with experience.
Mhm. So that's multiple block. Next thing I'll show you quickly is jigsaw or puzzle piece. So that's how I got this one. So with jigsaw or puzzle piece, as the name implies, you're gonna take your image, do your carving, and then cut out your block to as many sections as you need for your color. So you can see this one is the green one here. That one's this one. Got the mountains, and then the sky.
So to create that, you use one big block and then cut it with a knife.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So it started off really awkward. At the bottom piece there, but you get the idea. So I started off by carving out my image, and then I cut the block into different pieces.
it's almost futile to try and not do it in one piece, because you'd never be able to get exactly the same.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the advantage of this is you can print or ink up each section individually, so you don't have to worry about the overlapping of color. I can just yes and no. When you cut the block, you want to make sure you cut it at a 45-degree angle or a beveled edge. If you just do a straight cut, then they have a tendency to shift and move. If you do a bevel edge, they lock into place, so that'll help.
Print them all together.
You print them all together. So if you ink them up separately, and then you bring them together to print. Yeah. Otherwise, yeah, it'd be very hard to register. But that beveled cut is really important. That way they lock in.
So that's gotta take quite a bit of skill there.
Yeah.
Is that lino without?
That's lino without the
Practice with
backing.
your offcuts.
Yep, that's lino without the backing. So it just locks into place.
And that's just the lino, right?
Yep.
There's no backing.
No backing. If you had a scroll saw, you could do that.
Yeah,
This
not
I just-
at 45 degrees though.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Or yeah.
Neighbor that does.
I think the thing is not to be cheap with your disposable blades.
Hmm.
Like, don't try and make them last. Just,
Right.
yeah.
Anyway, treat yourself. Here I just used an X-Acto knife. I heated the lino so it's easier to
Oh,
cut.
yeah, so it's not-
So it's nice and soft. And then made the cuts.
I have like a griddle that I used to do on caustics and stuff like that, and I wonder if that would work for, just heating it up so that it would, cause then you could kind of leave it on there for a little bit.
Yep.
Doesn't take very long, no blow dryer.
Blow dryer.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I have like a pad for is it for seating? Like it's almost like an electric blanket for gardening seeds. Yeah.
Oh.
For starting seeds.
Okay.
Just makes it malleable.
Yeah.
How do you get nice cuts?
Yeah.
Of the,
Well, that's where you're
Bevel?
showing off, cause
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not that easy, I'm
No,
telling
I
you that
can't
right
imagine
now.
doing that. It takes a
Um,
while to learn that, right?
yeah, sharp blade, and really soften up the lino. It's probably the best thing.
So, are you always cutting away from yourself then when you're doing the 45? What do you
Yes.
tell your students? Do what I say, not what I do.
Yes, I always. I'm trying to be as careful as I can be.
And it's not exactly 45
No.
degrees, it's just on an angle.
It's on an angle, so you lock in. You still get a little bit of a line, but that's just part of it.
But that's the beauty of the print.
Mm-hmm.
Of a handprint.
Yeah, so ink them up separately, then bring them together. And I like using those thick pieces of tape to kind of brace it.
Or you could even brace the backside,
Brace.
you could put tape on the.
Oh yeah, I've used double-sided tape sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works really well. And the nice thing is, if you don't like the color combination, you can just clean that one piece and then ink it up in a different color. So,
Can I just say another thing?
yes.
You have to take care of something like that, because that lead edge is extremely fragile, so when you're storing it and putting it away for
Yep.
yeah.
For the next group, yeah. So that's puzzle piece. I'll try that as well.
How many pieces would you say is a good amount to have? What's too many?
Depends on your image and your patience, and
As long as you can handle it.
as long as you can handle it.
So, sorry, I can't remember if you said, did you draw everything first
Mhm.
and then where it's gonna be cut and then cut it? So if
Yeah.
you mess up after with your cutting, then you're kind of screwed.
Yeah.
But the thing with the cutting, I'm sorry to interrupt, you only get one chance.
That's what
Yeah.
I mean. How long would that have taken you to?
This one, maybe I did it in the afternoon.
Yeah,
Studio.
there's not too many cuts.
It's not too many cuts really when you look at it. It's pretty solid.
It's been doing it for 30 years.
Yeah.
So it's probably like a month.
I'm sorry, I'm a jerk.
You're
No.
not.
Well, no, it's 10,000 hours, man.
Yeah,
It's true.
exactly.
Are there any questions about these techniques?
Probably as soon as the class is over and I go home.
I think what I might do in my
I'm
studio at
thinking,
home.
my question is,
Yes.
how do you hold it together? to
When you're
do-
printing?
When you're printing. Yeah, but isn't that reducing the ink?
No, ink it up, bring it onto your wherever you're printing, then put your
can see
tabs.
from the
He's
same-
blocking it with
Oh,
his,
okay,
with
I
his
get
big
you, you're
pieces of
putting thick
yeah.
tape on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I get
Or else you could, like you said, put little pieces of double-sided tape
you.
on
On
the back.
the back, yeah. So you have a mechanical registration that's holding it together.
Yeah,
Okay.
that helps too.
Students, like with older high school students, you know,
Mhm.
I
So
do the cutting.
Yeah, yes.
So a person
Something like
shouldn't be
that.
extremely fixated with all this accuracy of everything, because that, reduce the quality of the print,
The accuracy or the?
the accuracy?
Depends on the artist.
Like,
or-
no, it depends on the person
Person,
consuming.
yeah. Mhm.
Because people can get fixated on the whole accuracy of the thing and not the general finished product.
Mhm. That's true. Mm.
It's practice.
Practice.
And I really think the softening the material
Mhm.
would be advantageous. And, don't cheap out on the X-Acto blade
Nope.
knives, just keep snapping them off,
Mhm.
keep them sharp.
Yep. Yeah. That's it for demos tonight.